Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our beginning discussion on the origins of Christianity. We're going to be looking at the original people of Christianity. We're going to be looking at the original intent of Christianity, the location of the foundation of Christianity, the ancient priesthood, ancient scripture, and also the issue of iconoclasm and the erasure of the foundation of Christianity. And that's what makes it so difficult for people to wrap their arms around or wrap their minds around the origin of Christianity. In addition to that, you have the origin being wiped out in terms of what is taught in school. And so there is a reluctance or a dearth of information perhaps available for people when they are teaching about the origins of Christianity or just the history of religion, period. So we're just going to quickly delve into this. This is not going to be long. This is a responsive discussion. And again, it's going to come in small parts. Now, there was a discussion from Dr. Saraki related to the black man and woman and where is their God. And so what I'm going to do is walk through some responses to this question because this question comes up quite a bit. And so it is apparently an important question for a number of people. And as we come to answer some of the questions posed in the discussion, hopefully it will serve as a catalyst for you thinking more deeply about the history of religion and just the history of people in general. Some of the things that we've talked about before will sort of be reasserted in this discussion. And so you might want to go back and look at some earlier discussions because we have addressed this in a number of ways. It might not seem like it's related, but all of it ultimately is related, has been related, and will be related. So let's get started. And so before we go into this, I just want to offer you a few things here to think about in terms of the test answers. And so these are the answers to some of the questions that were posed in the discussion from Dr. Saraki and some of the ideas that were examined. And so this is what I am offering in terms of consideration, food for thought, for those of you who are contemplating these same questions about where is your black God or where is the God of the black people. So I want to offer you a few things here, and there are 6 points to consider. One is that currently on this earth, there exists a multiplicity of black, and then quotation marks, gods throughout the earth. Number 2, Africa specifically has an overabundance of black gods or deities on the continent and throughout its diaspora. Also to take into consideration, even though it may not be clear on its surface or clear on its face, the 4 major world religions are founded upon gods or God or deities that are manifested in colored forms in one way, shape, form, or fashion, whether you are talking about Christianity, whether you are talking about the original religion of the Hebrews, the descendants of Jacob, or whether you're talking about Hinduism, whether you're talking about Islam, whatever you were talking about in terms of these 4 major world religions, there is a manifestation of someone representing those religions in a colored form, in other words, in a brown form, a darker brown form. Number 4, the 4 major world religions were cultivated by the quote unquote black man and woman in Africa and Asia. It's Africa/Asia because basically they are the same entities. And number 5, ancestral, in other words, self-extension worship is prevalent in Africa and throughout the earth. And ergo, black gods, black goddesses are replete in terms of worship around the world. Finally, and this is important to keep in mind, and you have to think about this historically, anthropologically, and genealogically. European spirituality and African spirituality are united. They are the same. And so simply because you export something from Africa and transplant it somewhere else, that does not then make it originating out of that new place. And we have a habit around the world of things and people being transplanted and then taking on those new identities. And so even transplanting Christianity outside of the African Asian context does not then make it a European creation, even if Europeans were the ones capitalizing on it. And it's also important to keep in mind that connection between Africa, Europe, and Asia. And in many ways, when you were looking at those plates, this is basically one system going on here. You have a lot of interchange going on, but it's basically one system, and historically it has been one system, people moving all around it, but still one system. There were some readings provided earlier related to African history, and so hopefully people have accessed some of those readings so that they can address some of these questions, because the Christianity conundrum is a part of that. So what is the Christianity conundrum? The conundrum is related to the idea and the reality that Christianity is rooted in Africa/Asia. What happened was that there were two major Christianity pathways, and this creates quite a bit of confusion. You have one Christianity that is coming from East Africa, then going into Southern Europe. This is during an earlier time period. Then it was repackaged, and then it went from Southern Europe into West Europe and West Africa. And so you have two Christianities going on, basically. You have the one in East Africa, West Asia, and then you don't have that just going straight across Africa until you get to West Africa. You have Christianity being taken from Asia, East Africa, going up into Europe, again, being reformulated, repackaged, and then brought over to the west coast of Africa, given to them in a different form. So you have this construct of Christianity, but the Christianity in East Africa and the Christianity in West Africa are different Christianities. You can see this even in the manifestation of the people, the entities that are supposed to be representing Christianity. So in East Africa, you have a number of brown depictions of people with respect to divinity. You have the same thing going on when you look at Europe. If you go into Europe, you will see, if you go in the museums, you go in certain places, you will see this sort of Black Madonna and Child dynamic going on. You see these brown features depicted over in East Africa. But somehow or another, when you get to West Africa, you had an overabundance of depictions that were not the same as the ones in East Africa. Now, it's unclear how this whole thing came about, because the people that were originally in Europe were also brown. However, by the time Christianity made its way to the west coast of Africa, you had individuals who were bringing in a different type of Christianity, and it was a racialized Christianity. And part of it was about the colonization of the minds of the indigenous people of Africa. There might have also been some dynamics of trying to colonize the minds of the prior residents of Europe that were pushed down into West Africa, or that went to West Africa in order to settle West Africa. And so part of this settling, conquering the west coast of Africa involved this spiritual conquering process. And part of the spiritual conquering conversation revolved around re-articulating the physical manifestation of these divine dynamics. There are many dynamics in scripture that point to an African or an Asian origin of Christianity versus a European origin of Christianity. And you have one here in this scripture from Hosea 13:4. And it indicates, "Yet I am the Lord thy God from the land of Egypt." You will see multiple references to location and geography throughout scripture. And this geography points to a number of other dynamics. But there is this oriental orientation with respect to scripture, and that paints the picture that there was a particular phenotype that was associated with the origin of Christianity. When taking into consideration all of the historical and religious records that are available, one must come away with the understanding that Christianity has roots in the areas known as Jordan, Syria, Ethiopia, and Egypt. One thing that is noteworthy about Christianity is you have a dual purpose going on in the New Testament. And that dual purpose is with respect to the entity understood as the Messiah and the entity understood as Paul. So for one entity, that would be the person understood as the Messiah, there was a mission that was focused on what was known as the house of Israel or the house of Jacob. And many people who read the Bible and who understand themselves as Christians don't understand this particular passage, or sometimes even find it problematic, because you do have a displacement replacement theology going on as a part of the New Testament. And so you have here in Matthew 15:24, "I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Okay, so what happens when you have this is that there is a mission that for this Messiah that is focused specifically on this particular group of people, understood as lost and understood as belonging to a particular clan, a particular tribe, a particular family. When you look at Paul, however, he appears to expand this messianic dynamic to other people who are outside of this house of Israel or this house of Jacob. And that also opens the door for what is understood as European or Roman Christianity. The original Christianity appears to have been constructed for a specific group of people. And then you have others by extension who are coming into that fold. But originally, this appears to be a very Afro-Asiatic dynamic. And then you have Europe sort of integrating itself into this dynamic. It's also important to remember that at this time, Rome, Greece, the rest of Europe, that was a fairly brown group of people. If you look at the art renderings, they were fairly brown. And so whether you're talking about Africa or Asia or Europe, you're still talking about brown people constructing this dynamic. A question one might ask is why brown people would be constructing or participating in the construction of a Messiah that has a phenotype that is inconsistent with their own. Because again, remember that the original people that were there were brown. Now you have a number of people that appear to be migrating to Europe based upon phenotype, and Europe in many ways being a more comfortable space to be in because of the phenotype. Now we've looked at some similar depictions before related to Ethiopia, and these are individuals climbing up that expansive mountain in order to get up to their place of worship, their place of refuge. And some of the places of refuge in Ethiopia appear to be in response to a Roman invasion. If you recall, there were times when, because of the scriptures that Ethiopia had in its possession, there was a move to get these scriptures from the Ethiopian priests. The Ethiopian priests, bishops, ran into the wilderness to escape the Romans who were coming to get the scriptures and take these scriptures back to Rome. So they were basically told they had to give up these scriptures. But because they had some original documents, they were not willing to give them up. And they have the scripture up on top of this mountain. It's very difficult to get even a copy of whatever it is that they have, and to get it in their language, it is a very expensive endeavor. If you check it out, you will see that. And you also only have certain people who are allowed to come up the mountain. You actually have to have assistance from them in order to climb up the mountain. And this is just another mountain depiction. And this gives you an idea of the size of this place from a distance. And this is yet another depiction. It's also important to point out that you have actual building structures that indicate the earliest presence of Christianity being in that Afro-Asiatic area. So in the area of Egypt, in the area of Ethiopia, in the area of Jordan and Syria. And here you have information about the oldest known purpose-built church is in Jordan, and that this came about between 293 and 303. And so this predates the church that is in Jerusalem. And here you have another indication coming out of the Guinness World Book of Records. And here you can see this claim to the origin and an indication that this particular church was already in existence before Christianity, as it says, found favor with Roman imperial government. And so before the Romans took over Christianity, Christianity was already firmly planted and rooted in Asia and Africa. There is also an offering that 70 of the disciples of the Messiah were sheltered in a church in this area. And so again, there is increasing support for the contention that Christianity is rooted in Africa/Asia and not in Rome. And these are just some map renderings in case you want to check them out. And these are some additional ones so that you can get an idea of the proximity of different places. So you can see Jordan, and you can also see where Iraq is situated, in Saudi Arabia and Turkey. This is another map rendering so that you can have a better idea of where Jordan is situated with respect to a number of places today. Now, of course, you know how historians roll. It's possible that Jordan was in a totally different location back then, but this is where we have it situated right now. We will follow this up with part 2, a quick look at the early African Christian priesthood. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care. See you soon.